Hello Groveland Township. Today's video is being done on December the 10th, 2018. And today with me is a guest speaker, Lieutenant Lance Cook. And Lance, I want to thank you for coming today. We told a number of you that the supervisors had attended a meeting a few weeks ago where the topic of the meeting was to talk about gravel road speeds and how they actually react and how they're determined. And Lance is from the organization within the state police that controls the traffic safety issues and the traffic studies for speed limits. So one of the things I thought we'd do today is to have him elaborate a lot of the information he gave us at that supervisors meeting so that you'd understand what happens on a gravel road with speed limits and what changes actually have positive or negative impacts on it. I know many of you probably realize that over the last couple of years, the state police have upped the speed limits on certain sections of the expressway system, and that's because those pieces of the expressway have the right kind of requirements to allow a higher safe speed on them. And then again, when you get closer to the cities, it tends to come back down because of either extra traffic, shorter sight distances, etc. But those same people that set that also set the speed limits on the other paved roads in Michigan and also are responsible for the gravel roads. Now, I know many of you been out here for a long time like I have, and we used to be able to, in Oakland County and one other county in the state of Michigan, post speed limits on gravel roads at 25 miles an hour. It never really complied with the law. And what happened is a few years ago, the two counties that had those speed limits, and Oakland County was one of them, pulled all the 25 mile an hour speed limit signs out. And some people got pretty concerned at it. Lance is used to dealing with the kinds of issues at the state police that actually impact whether or not a road is safe at a certain speed, what people's driving characteristics are, and whether or not posting a sign has any real impact on it. So what I'd like to do at this time, Lance, if it's okay, is kind of turn it over to you to enlighten people a bit about how gravel road speeds are handled here in Michigan statewide, and some of the things that you talked to the supervisors about that dealt with whether or not they would actually have the desired result people thought they might.
Okay, let me just back up a little bit and explain the speed limit process in general. On state roads, M roads, I roads, US roads, speed limits set jointly by the state police and the Michigan Department of Transportation. We do an engineering study, look at things like geometry, sight distance, look at the traffic crash history, not just how many, but the pattern and the type of crashes. And then we use, the primary thing is the 85th percentile speed. And the 85th percentile speed represents the upper end of the normal range of where the normal drivers are driving. So if we set the speed limit appropriately at that 85th percentile, that allows us to have some enforcement effort. We have a sign with a number that means something, and we can actually take enforcement action against those people that are dangerous. If the speed limit is set too low, it puts sometimes more than half the population in violation, and we can't effectively target our enforcement efforts.
And actually going too slow can actually cause accidents too, can it?
Actually, if you look at the studies, going slower than the middle of the pack is more dangerous than going faster than the middle of the pack. Yeah. The safest speeds, regardless of the number on the sign, tend to be about 7, 8, 9 miles an hour over the 50th percentile. So the drivers running right about the 85th percentile are the safest drivers on the road. Okay. And unfortunately, when the speed limit's set artificially low, those are the ones that get targeted for enforcement because they happen to be going a certain amount above the number on the sign.
What some people might say looks like a traffic trap, right?
Yeah, speed trap. In a lot of cases, those are not intentional. Like they're not there to raise revenue like you might expect reading stuff on the internet because at least on the state and county roads, law enforcement doesn't see a penny of the revenue from that. In city and village, 30% of the money goes back to the general fund, so there potentially could be an incentive for an unscrupulous city or village, but not for county or townships are out of the picture as far as getting any revenue from that. On county roads, which are the ones you typically have in the townships, those are set jointly by the state police and the county road commission. And in 2006, the legislature inserted township boards into the process. Typically, the township board has the option of opting in or opting out. And we changed the process here a couple of years ago to, instead of having the township board sit on a panel and go out and do the studies with us and all that, we have them pass a resolution asking us to do the study and then agreeing to abide by the results of the study so that they're not say, not happy with the results and if the speed limit's going to go up, we don't have that issue of pushback and fighting and all of a sudden backing out and not wanting to participate.
And again, that's because the state police make their decisions on traffic issues and speeds based on a huge amount of statistical data that you've gathered over the years. I think every UD-10, which is basically an accident report form, ends up going to the state police at some point in time.
Yeah, we are by statute required to keep the statistics for that. And we use the statistics as part of the process, decision-making process for setting the speed limits. But again, the predominant method we use is the 85th percentile of travel speeds, because that's the drivers telling us what feels safe and reasonable to them. And again, 85th percentile represents the upper end of normal, so it's those 15% and usually the top 2 or 3% that are causing most of the problems that people are concerned about when they say everybody's flying past my house. Yeah. It's not the top 15 or the top 50%, it's the top 2 or 3.
Yeah, I know in some cases I've told our troopers out here and residents that have complained about bad speeding on a particular section of road, I've told them what really works the best, because I live on Groveland Road, on the part that's paved, and it's 3 miles of flat, straight pavement. And again, we've had cases where 1 or 2 people are really abusive of it and going very fast. What happens is, it's been most effective when we can say, if you can tell me when the person that's normally doing, or persons doing the speeding, are coming by and the kind of vehicle they're in, well then I can get to the state police and say, can you go there, for example, around 3:30 in the afternoon, it's a kid that's driving a red pickup truck and he's flying by every day. Then they can be effective in stopping it. That's literally how we stopped one of the motorcycles a few years back on my road that must have been going by the house at least, I think, 100 miles an hour. And my wife would say, well, why don't you stop him? I said, I can't even read his plate, he's going so fast.
Yep.
But we finally figured out who it was. The state police took care of it and the problem stopped. And I think that's one of the most effective ways if you have a bad particular situation with a few people, like you said, that are really causing the problem, is if you can give us some information, we can try and address it a little bit better.
Yeah, it's almost always the one particular neighbor's kid or the one particular guy that's going to work at a certain time that they're complaining about, and they think that lowering the number on the sign is somehow going to change that person's behavior, and it doesn't. And all lowering the number on the sign does is put more good drivers in violation. And that breeds disrespect and contempt for good traffic control. And so, getting back to how we set the speed limits, and it's the State Police and Road Commission, pretty much with the township agreeing ahead of time that they're going to go by our decision. That works really good for paved roads. What we find with gravel roads is it's a little bit different issue. We've historically been opposed to setting speed limits on gravel roads because, number one, the conditions change frequently. In the course of a heavy rain shower, you can go from a nice higher speed to something that's very low as the upper end of safe very quickly. And conversely, you can have the road grader come through and chloride, and all of a sudden the safe speeds back up a little bit.
I've noticed that, for example, the primary roads in our township, which is still the gravel part of Groveland Road, Barron Road, Wildwood Road, tend to be wider, clearer, much better visibility. And when those are in excellent shape and hard packed and the daylight's out, you can actually do 55, I think, on those quite safely. But you're right, if it starts getting icy, snowy, a lot of rain, they get very slippery, and most people that I've seen drop the speed substantially. I've also noticed that even though the secondary roads, which may be technically 55 miles an hour, conditions permitting, have much higher hills and valleys, they're generally not as widely cleared, and I think your experience has indicated that most people on gravel roads like those don't tend to go 55 even when the weather's good.
Right. Gravel roads are what we call self-regulating, in that there's kind of an upper end of what feels comfortable for most people. People want to get from point A to point B as efficiently as they can, but they don't want to get in a crash doing it. So regardless of the number on the sign, people will form a pattern around a 50th percentile, and we find that on a gravel road, you might have people going as slow as 15 or 20 miles an hour, and some people going as fast as 40, 45. And on the ideal conditions, they may make it up to 55, sometimes a little higher. But we found most gravel roads in this part of the state, under normal conditions, the 85th percentile seems to be in the mid to high 30s.
Yeah, somewhere around 37, 38
Yeah,
miles
37, 38.
I'd say that's pretty typical.
And then the 50th percentile seems to be pretty close to 35. There's not a whole lot of difference. The pack is pretty tight. Although, with gravel roads, sometimes we don't see a nice bell curve. Sometimes we see kind of a flat distribution, especially if a road is not in the greatest shape. And you'll have people going really slow and then some other people trying to go a little bit faster. But, 35, 38, somewhere in there is where the majority of the cars are traveling. And it doesn't matter what numbers on the sign, whether it was back when the illegal 25 signs were up.
They're still going 38, right?
They're still going 38, right. And now that it's 55, they're still going 38. Yeah.
So actually changing the speed limit sign doesn't typically have the desired result then. I think a lot of people feel that, if I post it at this other number, everybody will do that. And what actually happens is, you said the 50th percentile that's not doing it anyway is still going to probably be doing the wrong speed based on the sign posting.
Yeah. And what we found, there's two things we're looking at. There was a study by Kansas State University a few years back, I believe 2009, and 58% of the roads in Kansas are gravel roads. And they allow posting a speed limit on gravel roads, but only one county doesn't. And everybody else is unposted 55. The county that posts the gravel roads, and they post them at 35 miles an hour, the 85th percentile speeds are 38 miles an hour. On the unposted counties and those gravel roads where its speed limit's 55, the 85th percentile is 3 miles an hour lower at 35 miles an hour. And then our other thing we're looking at is we did our first ever gravel road speed limit on Livernois here in Rochester Hills just a few months back. And what we found is road rage has gone up since the signs went in. And part of it is now where a faster driver would just pass a slower driver because they all understand it's a gravel road and people go what feels safe. Well, now there's a number on the sign, and if somebody's going slower than that number on the sign, the person behind them, they're tailgating, they're honking, and they flip them off when they go by. Yeah. And the guy that was the big squeaky wheel down there just absolutely regrets having been a part of that and wants the law repealed and go back to unposted 55.
That's why I think the real critical issue is typically whether or not there's a few people that are abusing it, that are the consistent problems on a road. The other thing I've noticed is we've had people come in and they say, so-and-so was speeding on a road, and really the average individual is not a very good estimate of what the vehicle speed is when it's going by, because we've had people say, I got yelled at and I was going 35.
Yeah. As a pedestrian, cars always look like they're going faster than they are if you're in another car. And what we found is if you take, say, one of these speed trailers, radar trailer, out to a particular stretch of road, the locals get a chance to see that the cars aren't really going as fast as we thought. You want to be careful. You don't want to put those up near a high school because the kids will take it as a challenge.
Well, we got a drag race with a timing light, right?
But in other areas, sometimes those speed trailers can be effective just to show the residents how fast cars are actually going.
Yeah, I know there's a few of those when they get moved around periodically, but I honestly think most of the people on the roads that I've seen are usually driving at a pretty reasonable speed. They really are. Yep. Again, it's usually a few people that tend to be the abusers in the situation, and a lot of times the complaints I've heard have been around the time school gets out, kids getting home and that kind of thing, that think they can go faster. And again, we're more effective, I think, trying to deal with those if we can get a time and a type of vehicle, because then there's something to focus on instead of the carte blanche. Everybody speeds all the time. They're always doing it. Every time we've checked that, it just never ends up being that. But certainly where there's a real problem, we would like to try and take care of it. But it's important to understand the points you brought up, that sometimes posting it actually gets the exact opposite result, makes it a little bit faster, and people get more frustrated with driving.
Yeah, if we took down all the signs, people would kind of form a natural grouping and speed they feel comfortable with. And the only reason for us to have the signs at all is so that we can take enforcement action when you get that 2 or 3% that really need to be looked at.
And that's why you say when you do a study, you have to have the commitment that everybody agrees. If you do the study and the number comes out at something you don't like, it's still the number. Yeah. So that's why it's, you need to be careful what you're doing and really understand what's happening here. You could actually say, I want it slower, and find out, well, really, when it gets done, the 85th percentile was going 5 miles an hour faster, they're going to raise it.
Yeah. And that happened to us a few years back in a neighboring county that shall remain nameless. We had a township board that asked us to come in and do a speed study. We did the study, and it supported raising the speed from 35 to 45. And the township board freaked out and backed out of the process. We ended up posting it anyway without their participation. They sued us, And the circuit court in that county agreed with us and said the township board opted out by their failing to participate and not offering a scientific explanation or any alternative.
Yeah, I know. That's the hardest thing. I think people, part of this gets wrapped up with emotion. People have a tendency to feel that I know it's better, and I think if you post it, everybody will slow down, and that's just not what human nature is. And so sometimes trying to impact the kind of change you're looking for, you get the exact opposite result. Again, the stuff that the state police does isn't based on just pulling it out of thin air. You folks have tons and tons of traffic safety data that you use to come up with these numbers. That's why you know what actually happens.
And we've done tens of thousands of studies over the decades, to set speed limits. The problem we've had since 1974 in the national energy speed limit is there was a myth put out to the public that slower is automatically safer, and that that whole fiasco with the energy speed when it was
Everything
first
got
put
dropped
in.
to 55.
Yeah, when it was first put in, and it was a patriotic thing to slow down to save some energy, people were all on board. As soon as it was made permanent and under the guise of safety, and people saw that it didn't really contribute to safety, it became the most unpopular law since Prohibition. And it's led to a lot of the contempt for speed limits now. I think we have more people disobeying the signs than we had in the past, but so many signs are artificially low.
Yeah, I think so. Is there any other points you think that we should make in regards to this issue that you wanted to bring up to anybody?
Well, the biggest thing was the gravel roads in this area. They're low volume. You typically don't have a lot of cars using the same stretch of road at the same time. And when there are, if somebody wants to go a little faster, they can go around the other one. For us to come out and do a study on a gravel road that's low volume, it ties up a traffic crash reconstructionist for several hours to get enough cars to do a study.
And you've only got 8 for the whole state.
I've only got 8 for the whole state, yeah. And I got one guy that covers Oakland and Macomb, and he's busy.
I can imagine.
Doing fatal and serious injury crashes are his priority. And then between court and training and other things, and the way they wrote the law, we've got a very narrow window from the time they finish, doing the maintenance on a road to when we come out and actually do the study. It's a narrow window. We're dependent on the weather, other things, and we come out and we can't get 100 cars. I think last time my guy came out to do one of your neighboring townships, he sat for an hour and 10 minutes and got 15 cars.
I know we had a request that was talked about quite a bit on one of the roads out here, and we looked up the study when we were at that seminar and found out that there wasn't any point in time where the traffic numbers for the time you would do the studies indicated there was enough traffic to meet the criteria for doing the studies. So the other thing they need to keep in mind, and again, this is because we're such a small township, really effectively the smallest one in Oakland County, if you don't have enough to meet the study limits, you won't do the study.
Right.
And if you do the study, they are low priority after all the accident investigation and other crash-related activity that you do. So they get scheduled. It could take quite a while to get a study done, and you have to agree to abide by what the results are. And you have to agree that if it doesn't meet the minimum criteria for the traffic volumes, you won't do the study either.
Right.
So I'm just trying to make sure everybody understands it's not as clear as just, we call up and say I want a study and it gets done. There's just not enough people to do it that way.
Right.
Any other points you feel we should mention?
No, I think that's pretty much covered it. You can have my contact information on the website. Or,
okay. Are you? Brent can put that on with your name and title here, and then you said that you also had the PowerPoint presentation we had. I think we're going to see if we can interject some of that into this video as well. So until the next video, Groveland, I hope this helps answer some of the questions on how traffic speed limits are set in the state of Michigan and what can and can't be done, and I hope it answers your questions. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Until then, have a great day and be safe driving.